Game start.
Hey, welcome to, or welcome back to, the Average Joe Nerdcast. I'm Nate, your resident nerd, and this is a show where we break down the games, shows, and cartoons that shaped us. Sometimes it's a little history, sometimes it's a story time, and sometimes it's me ranting like I'm giving a TED Talk on why Ed, and Eddie's Jawbreaker economy is basically early crypto bro scams. It's decentralized, Double D, trust the plan. But always, it's about celebrating the stuff we grew up on, the stuff that made us laugh, made us a little weird, and honestly, made us who we are. And on today's episode, man, today's a big one. Because we're diving into an era that if you were there, you'll never forget it. And if you weren't, buckle up, kiddos. Because we're talking about when Cartoon Network wasn't just a channel, it was the kingdom. Now do me a favor and close your eyes for a second, and picture this. It's the late 90s. The TV in your living room isn't flat. It's a chunky cube with dials that click and a remote that weighs as much as a brick. The carpet smells faintly of pizza rolls. You drop your backpack after school, grab a soda, and start flipping channels. Nickelodeon's got slime, Disney's got laugh tracks. But then, you land on Cartoon Network. And instantly, it feels different. Now, this wasn't just background noise. It wasn't just something to kill time before dinner. Cartoon Network felt like stepping into another world, a place where the absurd and the experimental lived side by side, where you could laugh until your stomach hurt, get spooked by a creepy CGI mummy chanting in the dark, discover anime for the first time, or stumble into a midnight fever dream where a milkshake, fries, and meatball were screaming at each other in Jersey. Shout out to Carl, the most patient neighbor in all of New Jersey. Cartoon Network wasn't a channel. It was a kingdom with 4 great pillars holding it up. The cartoons, weird, fearless, totally original. Toonami, epic, thunderous, mythic. Adult Swim, surreal, satirical, completely absurd. And Boomerang, the treasure vault, the history that tied it all together. Together, they didn't just make a lineup, they built an empire. And for a generation of us, that empire was home. Today, we're not just reminiscing. We're giving that golden age the respect it deserves. The history, the creators, the risks, the weirdness, and the magic that made Cartoon Network king. So grab your pizza rolls, park yourself on that couch, and let's dive in. Before the swords and shields of Toonami, before the late-night weirdness of Adult Swim, the foundation of Cartoon Network's kingdom was in its originals, the cartoons. And here's the thing, they didn't just show up out of nowhere. They were born out of this wild experiment that honestly feels like something out of a heist movie. Flashback to 1992. Cartoon Network launches. Ted Turner's Big Swing, the first 24-hour cartoon channel. And yeah, he's got the vault. Hanna-Barbera, MGM, Warner Brothers. But he had no originals. It's reruns wall to wall. Enter Fred Siebert, new head of Hanna-Barbera. He's looking around like, we can't just live on Scooby snacks forever. We need new blood. So he cooks up this insane plan. What a cartoon. Give animators full control. Not executives, not merch people, but the animators. 7-minute shorts, total storyboard authority, and one simple rule. Make cartoons you'd actually want to watch. Then he opens the floodgates. And when I say floodgates, I want you to picture this. 5,000 submissions. VHS tapes stacked floor to ceiling like the world's nerdiest Jenga tower. Animators, students, veterans, weirdos, everyone mailed in their shot. And from those 5,000, they whittled it down to 48 projects. Now that's already impressive. But here's the kicker. Out of those 48, 7 went on to become full-blown series. 7 shows that built Cartoon Network's empire. And if you lay it out like a movie, it's almost Ocean's 11. Step 1, recruit the crew. Step 2, sneak the tapes into the vault. Step 3, pull off the job. Only here, the job was changing the face of TV animation. And they actually did it. And let's talk about the crew. Because these weren't just random names. These were the folks who redefined what cartoons could be. Jindy Tartakovsky, the tactician. Born in Moscow, raised in Chicago, studied film and animation like it was religion. His pilot Changes hit in 95, and a year later, he launches Dexter's Laboratory. Cartoon Network's first real original series. And you knew instantly it was different. The staging was tight, the comedic timing, surgical. Exaggerated poses, dramatic cuts, then silence right before a punchline. Chuck Jones energy cranked up on espresso. Jindy was the guy who knew how to land a gag with precision. Later, he gave us Samurai Jack, The Clone Wars, and Primal. Dude's basically animation samurai. Craig McCracken, the designer. His student short was called Whoop-Ass Stew. Yep, that was the real title. He cleaned it up, ran the pilot Meat, Fuzzy, Lumpkins in 95. And boom, the Powerpuff Girls.
Thus, the Powerpuff Girls were born, using their ultra superpowers, Blossom, Bubbles, and Buttercup.
What made Craig stand out? His design sense. Flat colors, bold outlines, UPA-styled minimalism mashed with Japanese pop art. It looked like nothing else on TV, and it popped off the screen. And his worlds always had this sweet, sour balance. Innocence colliding with chaos. John R. Dilworth, the surrealist. His short, The Chicken from Outer Space, aired in 96, and people didn't know what hit them. Out of that came Courage the Cowardly Dog in 1999.
We interrupt this program to bring you Courage the Cowardly Dog Show, starring Courage the Cowardly Dog.
Dilworth leaned into horror surreal, uncanny imagery, dream logic, uncanny CGI mummies. Courage wasn't nightmare fuel to me. It was absurdity fuel. The kind of weird that stuck in your brain and made you laugh nervously while hiding under a blanket. Danny Antonucci, the Rebel. He'd been doing edgy underground animation, and friends dared him to pitch something kid-friendly. He goes, sure, fine, draw 3 kids with thick-line slapstick energy, and Cartoon Network says, sure, dude, run with it. That became Ed, Edd n Eddy in 1999.
Ed, Edd n Eddy!
And it ended up their longest-running original. Danny's style was raw, wiggly, always in motion, like the lines themselves were laughing at you. Add in Van Partible with Johnny Bravo.
1, 2, 3, yeah! Baby!
Elvis Swagger meets Tex Avery gags, and David Feiss with Cow and Chicken.
Mama had a chicken. Mama had a cow. Dad was proud. He didn't care how.
Pure screaming chaos. And you've got this Avengers-level lineup of creators who were all wildly different, but united by one rule: make each other laugh. And that's Jindy's quote, the one that sums this entire experiment up. He said, "We were just trying to make each other laugh." That's it. That's the ethos. No demographic charts, no merch lines, just artists making themselves laugh and hoping it translated. And honestly, that's why these shows still feel so alive. When you give passionate people a real playground, you don't just get content, you get a culture. You cast a wide net not because you're ticking boxes on a PowerPoint slide, but because you've let artists be artists. Compare that to now. Studios chasing trends, algorithm-approved scripts, cookie-cutter storytelling. But back then, they were building worlds out of pure joy, and you could feel it. And here's why all of this mattered. These weren't commercials disguised as cartoons. Dexter wasn't trying to sell you some toothpaste. Courage wasn't trying to move plushies. These shows existed because someone thought it'd be funny if a mad scientist got dunked on by his sister, or if a cowardly dog fought cosmic horrors in the middle of nowhere, Kansas. That purity of intent is why they lasted. It's why we still quote them. They weren't content machines, they were genuine experiments in animation. Like, for instance, imagine Netflix greenlighting a cartoon about 3 kids scamming their neighborhood for jawbreakers. No tie-ins, no Fortnite crossover, just pure vibes. That was Cartoon Network in the 90s. And now for me, it always comes back to 3 shows. Courage the Cowardly Dog. That show had me hooked. My favorite episode will always be King Ramses' Curse. That creepy CGI mummy chanting, "Return the slab," in the dark, and the jingle, it's still stuck in my head decades later. But Courage wasn't nightmare fuel to me. It was absurdity fuel. Villains like Cats and LaQuack, they felt less like monsters and more like sketchy salesmen you avoid at the mall kiosks. And every time Courage would mutter his catchphrase, "The things I do for love," and dive headfirst into the madness. It was weird, it was bold, and I honestly loved every second of it. And then there was Ed, Edd and Eddy. That show basically invented the crypto schemes before crypto schemes. Every episode, the Eds cooked up some new scam to exchange labor and resources for jawbreakers. Looking back now, it makes absolute zero sense. Who's minting these jawbreakers, and why is the entire cul-de-sac economy based on them? It doesn't matter, because as kids, it felt perfect. And if you could do Ed's goofy laugh on the playground, you instantly had friends. And let's not forget Johnny Bravo. Elvis swagger, Bugs Bunny timing, and a total inability to read the room. And doing a Johnny Bravo impression was basically a rite of passage for every millennial kid. And yeah, it absolutely destroys your throat after 10 seconds, but that's half the fun. Hey, pretty mama. Oh God, not now. What the fuck is it, Steve? Seriously, Steve, I'm in the middle of talking about Courage, Ed, Edd and Eddy, and Johnny Bravo, and you want me to stop everything because you want to hear about Cow and Chicken. Get the fuck out of here. You'll get your fucking chicken. Was it the weirdest of the cartoons? Maybe. A mom and dad you only ever saw from the waist down, an evil red guy with a giant butt, and more screaming per episode than most metal albums. It was loud, crude, and absolutely unhinged. But that's kind of the point. It showed Cartoon Network wasn't afraid to push the weird dial all the way to 11. And if you were a kid who loved chaos, Cow and Chicken was your jam. Are you fucking happy now, Steve? Altogether, the cartoons prove you could let animators get weird and still come out with hits. They gave Cartoon Network something Nickelodeon and Disney couldn't replicate. A lineup that was proudly offbeat. Nick had slime, Disney had sitcom lights, Cartoon Network let the weird kids be weird. And for a lot of us, me included, that was incredibly powerful. It was the first time a network felt like it was speaking directly to us. So, that's the heart of the kingdom. Cartoon Network took 5,000 VHS tapes, rolled the dice on 48 pilots, and out of that came 7 shows that changed animation forever. They gave artists the keys, let them go wild, and built an identity out of pure joy and experimentation. And then, they strapped a sword to it. They built the block that would introduce anime to an entire generation of fans, with thunder in its veins and a spaceship for a stage. That's Toonami, and it changed everything.
Toonami is proud to present.
Something's going. Can you feel it?
Yeah, believe it!
So if cartoons were the heart of Cartoon Network's kingdom, Toonami was the sword and shield. This was the block that made your after-school TV feel like a mission. And before we dive in, I gotta give flowers to Mike Lazzo and the William Street crew. These were the same folks behind Adult Swim later, but first, they were the mad scientists who said, let's make an after-school block that feels like a space opera. They didn't just run cartoons, they ran a whole vibe. Launching March 17th, 1997, Toonami started small, first hosted by Moltar, the lava-headed bad guy from Space Ghost. He sat in this dark control room, queuing up Voltron and Thundercats like your cool older cousin who had the weirdest VHS collection. But in '99, Cartoon Network leveled up. Suddenly, we weren't in Moltar's booth anymore, we were aboard the Absolution, a spaceship cutting through the stars. And our new captain?
Hey there, this is your old buddy Tom, the Toonami Operations Module.
With Tom at the helm, Toonami wasn't just a block of shows anymore. It had its own style. It had lore. It had mythology. Now, before Toonami, anime in America was like contraband. You didn't stumble on it easily. You might catch Sailor Moon or Dragon Ball Z on UPN in the mornings, or maybe Pokemon and Yu-Gi-Oh! Sliding into the Saturday lineup on Kids WB. And if you were really, really lucky, you'd flip to the Sci-Fi Channel on a Saturday morning and hit their Saturday anime block, where you'd probably get smacked in the face by Akira or Ghost in the Shell, way before you were old enough to process what in the hell you were even watching. And then there was tape trading. Every group had that one kid, the hookup. And I had a buddy whose cousin went to conventions and came back with grainy VHS copies of Ninja Scroll or untranslated Dragon Ball Z episodes way ahead of the US airings. Unreliable subtitles, bad tracking. Sometimes the tape had been dubbed and redubbed until the colors bled into neon soup. It didn't matter. We watched it like it was a holy relic. And that's how anime lived before Toonami. Scattered, underground, something you hunted down. And then in '97, Cartoon Network just opened the gates. So March 17th, 1997, 4 p.m. Eastern, Toonami launches. And like I said, at first it was hosted by Moltar. And at that time, he was queuing up Thundercats, Voltron, the Herculoids, Robotech. And even though it was still early, the vibe was already there. Futuristic CGI bumpers, drum and bass beats, the sense that this wasn't just a lineup. It was kind of a mission briefing. But again, Tom 1 rolled out in 1999. Chunky, cartoony, kind of like R2-D2's bulked up cousin. And he was voiced by none other than Sonny Strait. Yeah, the same guy who voices Krillin in Dragon Ball Z. Sonny gave Tom this playful, quirky energy. A little snark, a little humor. He felt like your buddy just hanging out on the ship, spinning up shows. But then came The Intruder in 2000. That total immersion event killed Tom 1 on screen, eaten alive by a shape-shifting alien. Traumatizing for us kids, but also legendary, because in his place, Tom 2 was born. Sleeker, sharper, ready for action. And with that transformation came a new voice. Steve Bloom, anime royalty. Spike Spiegel in Cowboy Bebop, Wolverine in about 1 million different Marvel projects, and the man who would go on to define Tom from 2000 all the way to today. Bloom gave Tom this calm, grounded authority, hyped when he needed to be, but steady enough that you trusted him as your captain. And through Tom 2, Tom 3, Tom 4, and 5, cancellations, revivals, Steve Bloom has been the constant heartbeat of Toonami. And Tom wasn't flying solo. In 2000, they introduced Sarah, the Absolution's AI, voiced by Sally Timms at first, then Dana Swanson later. She was Tom's co-pilot, his anchor. If Tom was the hype man, Sarah was the steady hand. She handled diagnostics, cracked dry jokes, and made the Absolution feel alive. Together, they weren't just hosts. They were your crew, and that's why fans loved them like characters in the shows themselves. And then there was the Thunder, Peter Cullen, Optimus Prime himself. His promos didn't sound like commercials. They sounded like prophecy. The fate of the universe will be decided. Who's next? When Cullen's voice dropped over a DBZ clip, it wasn't just next episode at 5:30. It was a war horn. He gave Toonami gravitas. He made you believe that after school, the fate of everything really did rest on your shoulders. And Tom himself, he grew with us. There was Tom 1, our starter captain from 1999 to 2000. Then Tom 2 from 2000 to 2003. Then Tom 3 from 2004 to 2007. Full MechWarrior mode, like your buddy came back after summer looking shredded. Fans loved it. Then Tom 4, 2007 to 2008. Slimmed down, humanoid, kinda cartoony, and honestly, it didn't feel like Tom anymore. Fans were split, and Tom 5, the 2012 revival to today. The comeback kid, battle-worn, familiar, a little scarred, but he felt like our Tom again. And through it all, Sarah was there from 2000 until March 2007 when she was quietly phased out as the Absolution gave way to Flois 3. Her calm AI presence made the block feel balanced, like we were part of a real crew. Every redesign was an event. Fans debated them like sports teams because Tom wasn't just our host, he was ours. And here's where Toonami became legendary. The total immersion events. Serialized storylines told across the block and online. These weren't just bumpers, they were full-blown sagas. The Intruder in 2000. The Absolution gets invaded by a red alien blob. Tom 1 is eaten alive. Straight up, dies on screen. Traumatizing, and out of the wreckage, Tom 2 is born. Sleeker, stronger, a rebirth. Lockdown in 2001. The ship is under siege, but here's the twist. Fans could log onto the Toonami website to control ships in the battle, making real-time choices in 2001. That's proto-Fortnite seasons right there. Then Trapped in Hyperspace in 2002. Tom and Sarah are stranded mid-jump. Again, fans logged in to run diagnostics and save them. It blurred the line between glitch and story. The Immortal Grand Prix in 2003, a full-on anime event born out of a Toonami special. It went from an event to an actual series. Tom wasn't just introducing shows, he was building entire universes. Then Endgame in 2003, another massive battle. Tom 2 destroyed, Tom 3 unveiled. Fans were locked in like it was anime canon. Other channels gave you cartoons. Toonami gave you a drama in space that unfolded between episodes of Dragon Ball Z. And it absolutely worked. And the shows, man, the shows were the pipeline. Dragon Ball Z, Sailor Moon, Gundam Wing, Yu Yu Hakusho, Rurouni Kenshin, Outlaw Star, Naruto, The Big O, and the list goes on and on. Add in some Batman the Animated Series and the Justice League, and you had a block that was half East, half West, all hype. And if you missed an episode, forget it. Playground Law said you were exiled. Recess debates about power levels or Gundam factions were social currency. And if you didn't know what happened last night on Toonami, you had nothing to trade. And for me, Dragon Ball Z was the crown jewel. And real quick, we've got to give flowers to the theme song. I know everyone loves Chala Head Chala, but my God, Rock the Dragon was so damn epic.
Dragon Ball Z. Dragon, rock, dragon, come,
And it's where I fell in love with Vegeta as a character. Goku's fun, sure, but Vegeta? That guy had depth, pride, failure, constant humbling, clawing his way up only to get knocked back down. Watching him swallow that pride and keep fighting anyway, that hit me hard as a kid. And my God, you can't sit there and tell me he did not have the sickest theme song of all time. Check it out and tell me I'm not wrong. Also, shout out to Team 4-Star. Their parody took everything we loved about Vegeta and somehow made it even better. The greatest interpretation of the character?
Okay, what the hell am I sensing? Is that the Namekian? Is that me? Is that me stronger than me? Oh, kill me!
And while we're here, can we all admit something? Yes, Goku is technically Gohan's father, but Piccolo was that kid's daddy. Dude straight up adopted him, raised him, trained him, father of the year. Yes, give that man an award right now.
Check me out.
And Gundam, let's not pretend it was just big robots fighting. That show was dealing with war, politics, child soldiers, heavy shit for a cartoon block. And design-wise, Gundam Death Scythe was peak. Sleek, gothic, a literal mecha Grim Reaper. And right behind it, the Burning Gundam. And with those fiery fists of justice, pure chef's kiss. And Toonami didn't stop at afternoons. The Midnight Run from 1999 to 2003 gave us uncut anime marathons. Gundam Wing, the Dragon Ball Z movies like Tree of Might, even Daft Punk's Interstellar 5555. Staying up for that felt like you joined the night crew. Then there was The Rising Sun in 2000 to 2001, Saturday morning Toonami. Same epic vibe, just with a bowl of cereal. Toonami surrounded you. Morning, afternoon, midnight. You were never far from the Absolution. And Toonami wasn't done experimenting. Just when you thought you'd seen it all, they'd throw curveballs, like Giant Robot Week in February 2003. For 1 week straight, Toonami went full Mecha Festival. I'm talking Neon Genesis Evangelion, Robotech, Dygard, even Gigantor from way back in the day. It was like somebody opened the anime vault and just dumped every giant robot they could find into our after-school block. And for kids in the States who had no other way of seeing Evangelion, man, that was a revelation. You're coming off DBZ and Gundam, and suddenly here's this show about trauma, depression, and the literal end of the world, airing right alongside the stuff you were used to. It was a lot, and it mattered. Oh, for fuck's sake, Steve, what is it this time? Yes, dude, I was gonna mention it. Fine. You're right. Animation Magazine even hyped Giant Robot Week before it launched, framing it like a mini anime festival. Toonami wasn't just dropping filler, it was making a statement. Anime isn't a fad. It's here, it's massive, and we're doubling down. There, Steve. Happy? Good. Now let me get back to it. But nothing lasts forever, kiddos. And on September 20th, 2008, after 11 years, Toonami was canceled. The Absolution was gone. Tom Ford stood on a barren planet and gave one last sign-off. Stay gold. Bang. It was simple, understated, and completely heartbreaking. For a whole generation, it felt like the kingdom had fallen. But here's the thing about legends. They echo. April 1st, 2012. April Fool's Day. Out of nowhere, Toonami returns for one night. Fans lost their minds. Hashtags exploded, and the demand was so overwhelming that Cartoon Network brought it back full time.
Toonami's back, bitches.
Took you long enough.
And when Tom 5 and Sarah came back on our screens, older, scarred, but still standing, it was like seeing an old friend walk through the door. The kingdom wasn't dead after all. It had just been waiting for us. Toonami wasn't just programming. It was culture. Mike Lazo gave it life. Peter Cullen gave it thunder. Tom gave it heart. Sarah gave it soul. The bumpers gave it style. The TIEs gave it lore. And the shows gave us worlds that defined our childhood. It was where anime went mainstream, where playground debates were born, where we learned storytelling could be serialized, epic, and mythic. And for kids of the late 90s and 2000s, it wasn't optional. Toonami was a rite of passage. And I'll never forget it. My mom was working nights, putting herself through college, so I was a latchkey kid. On the weekends, as long as I didn't wake her up, I could stay up for the midnight run. So there I was, bowl of cereal in hand, TV volume low, watching Dragon Ball Z marathons with Tom and Sarah guiding me through the stars. And it felt like I wasn't just watching TV, I was a part of something bigger. That's Toonami, the sword and shield of Cartoon Network's kingdom. So, you've got cartoons holding down the heart. Toonami swinging the sword. But what happens when the lights go out? When it's past midnight and kids are supposed to be in bed? Cartoon Network said, nah, keep the channel on. And what they gave us wasn't just late night filler. It was surreal, it was absurd, it was satire, It was the kind of weird that made you question if you were awake or dreaming. That was Adult Swim. Now, you can't talk Adult Swim without talking about William Street, Cartoon Network's basement-level experiment lab in Atlanta, Georgia. Literally, their offices looked like a garage band practice space with a few editing bays. And out of that space came cheap genius. They didn't have the budgets of Nickelodeon or Fox, so what did they do? They cut corners and turned those cuts into comedy gold. Recycle old Hanna-Barbera footage, stretch minimal animation with dialogue, spend the savings on bold, absurd writing. C-Lab 2021 is the perfect example. They grabbed this forgotten underwater cartoon from the 70s, redubbed it with new scripts, and suddenly, you've got drunk coworkers blowing up their bass every other episode. It was lazy on paper, sure, but brilliant in execution. That cheap genius became the DNA of Adult Swim, because once you stripped away the polish, you could let the absurdity shine. And here's how they told us it was time to change gears. No flashy transition, no slime countdown, no Disney Channel circle wand garbage. Just a pool, a lifeguard whistle, and the words, "All kids out of the pool." Simple, direct, almost threatening in a sense. And that was the point. You weren't supposed to be there if you were underage, which of course made you want to stay even more. And let's face it, we all did. It was the perfect tone setter. A channel that, for the first time, admitted, hey, not everything here is for kids. Stick around if you dare. September 2nd, 2001, Adult Swim officially launches, and the first lineup was pure chaos. Space Ghost Coast to Coast, the OG Experiment, an old Hanna-Barbera superhero reimagined as a late-night talk show host. C-Lab 2021, disaster sitcom Underwater. Harvey Birdman, attorney at law, forgotten superhero turned lawyer for Hanna-Barbera clients. Scooby and Shaggy on trial. Yeah, they did that. And then Aqua Teen Hunger Force, the crown jewel of weird. A talking milkshake, a box of fries, and a meatball. Sometimes solving crimes, usually just arguing with their Jersey neighbor Carl. If you tuned in that first night, you knew instantly. This wasn't your average cartoon block. I'll never forget the first time I stumbled onto Aqua Teen Hunger Force. It was late, I was half asleep, probably raiding the kitchen for a snack. I flip on the TV expecting Scooby reruns to go back to sleep. Instead, a milkshake is screaming at a meatball. I literally thought I was dreaming. I sat there waiting for the punchline. But that was the punchline. And the longer it went on, the funnier it got. That's when it clicked. Adult Swim wasn't trying to be logical. It was just trying to be weird. And if you vibed with that weird, you were in the club. Please don't wear your shoes in the pool. Thank you. And those bumpers, black screen, white text, deadpan one-liners became just as iconic as the shows themselves. Sometimes dumb jokes, sometimes oddly profound, sometimes literally just reminders to hydrate. At 2 a.m., when you're sleep deprived, those words felt like the network itself was whispering directly to you. Now imagine if Netflix paused Stranger Things to flash a black screen that says, "Hey, you up? Don't forget to drink some water." That was Adult Swim. Weird, minimalist, absolutely brilliant. William Street wasn't trying to win Emmys. They were just trying to entertain themselves, much like Jindy said about cartoons. They were just trying to make each other laugh. That's why C-Lab could turn a budget shortcut into a punchline Why Birdman could use a decades-old animation cell as a setup for a courtroom gag. Why Aqua Teen could look like it was animated in Flash by one guy in a basement. Because half the time, it was. That cheap, scrappy model gave them total freedom. They didn't owe toy companies or advertisers anything. So they leaned all the way into absurdism. Don't forget to call your mom. She worries. And it wasn't just cartoons. Adult Swim had a second backbone, the music. Those bumpers and interstitials, they weren't filler. They were underground mixtapes. Artists like MF Doom, Flying Lotus, Danger Mouse, later Run the Jewels, they all found exposure on Adult Swim. In 2006, they even launched Adult Swim singles, free music downloads from indie and experimental artists. This was years before Spotify playlists. Adult Swim was curating vibes like a college radio station and sneaking them into your living room at 2 o'clock in the morning. So yeah, Adult Swim wasn't just shaping TV, it was shaping the culture. And here's where Adult Swim proved it had real power. You know Family Guy, right? Well, Fox canceled it in 2002. Dead in the water. But Cartoon Network picks up the reruns, starting April 20th, 2003. Those reruns blow up. Ratings skyrocket. The DVDs sell like crazy, and by 2004, Fox looks at the data and goes, wait, people actually want this? They order new episodes, and Family Guy officially returned in 2005. That's not just a funny anecdote. That's Adult Swim literally reviving a network show with cable reruns and fan demand. It proved late-night weird cartoons could move the needle on TV economics. That's insane. Your carpet looks nice. Did you vacuum? And look, Aqua Teen was iconic, but for me, my jam was the Venture Brothers.
Go Team Venture!
Sharp writing, hilarious parodies, and some of the best world building I have ever seen in an animated series to this day. It was absurd, yeah, but also clever as hell. And then there was Squidbillies.
Whoa! Hell yeah!
Offbeat, grimy, absolutely absurd. It felt like watching people I've actually met in reality. Well, minus the extra limbs and ink, of course. But the voices, the personalities, the small town chaos, that rang true. And that's the thing about Adult Swim. It wasn't one size fits all. Everybody had their thing. For some, it was Frylock. For me, it was Rusty Venture and Early Kyler. And if you know, you know. Adult Swim rewrote the rules. No laugh tracks, no structure, no apologies. Just raw absurdism, sharp satire, and vibes that bled into meme culture years before memes were even a thing. It made you feel like you were in on a secret, like you'd stumbled into a club you weren't supposed to know about. And that was the magic. For a whole generation, Adult Swim wasn't just late-night cartoons. It was rebellion. It was discovery. It was culture. Okay, so we've covered the heart with cartoons, the sword and shield with Toonami, the weird after dark with Adult Swim. But every kingdom needs its archives, its history, its vault of treasures. And that's what Boomerang was. The Castle Archives of Cartoon Network. And we've got to give Ted Turner his flowers here. He was more than just a media mogul. The guy was basically Indiana Jones for animation. In the late 80s and early 90s, Turner went on a shopping spree. He scooped up Hanna-Barbera, MGM's Cartoon Library, and Warner Brothers' classic animation catalog. That's why Cartoon Network could even launch as the first ever 24/7 cartoon channel. He literally owned thousands of hours of Scooby-Doo, Looney Tunes, Tom and Jerry, Flintstones, the Jetsons, you name it. But by the late 90s, Cartoon Network wasn't just about reruns anymore. The cartoons were popping off, Toonami was bringing in anime, and Adult Swim was just around the corner. So what do you do with all of that history? You create a vault. And on April 1st, 2000, Boomerang spun off into its own channel, and its mission was simple: preserve the old guard. And you've got to remember, this was before YouTube, before streaming, before box sets were common. If you were a kid in 2001 and you wanted to see Bugs Bunny or the Jetsons, you didn't go to a streaming app. You hoped Boomerang was playing it. It was the only place to see the classics on a regular basis. And it wasn't just nostalgia, it was an education. Boomerang was basically cartoon history class in disguise. Now think about it. Bugs Bunny perfected timing and sarcasm. Tom and Jerry were slapstick masters. Scooby-Doo showed how formula and familiarity could still hook kids. Watching Boomerang, you didn't just laugh, you were soaking up the DNA of modern animation. And here's where Turner's philosophy really shines. He believed kids deserved access to the full history of animation. He was basically the guy shouting, "These belong in a museum!" Except instead of locking them away, he broadcast them. Boomerang was the museum and the playground rolled into one. It was preservation through exposure. Millions of kids got their first taste of classic cartoon heritage because Turner refused to let it gather dust. For me, Boomerang wasn't just Saturday morning background noise. It was family time. I'd sit with my mom and my grandma watching Scooby-Doo.
Where are you? We got some work to do now.
3 generations laughing at the same jokes. Shaggy running in place, Velma losing her glasses, the inevitable unmasking of Old Man Withers. That laugh, 3 generations deep. It's why Boomerang mattered. It proved cartoons were timeless. They weren't just kids' stuff. They were bridges across generations. And Boomerang wasn't just a dumping ground, it was curated like a treasure vault. Scooby marathons, Flintstones weekends, Tom and Jerry specials, even holiday blocks. Spooky Scooby marathons every single Halloween, or Jetsons marathons on New Year's. The shows were treated like crown jewels, not filler. And that balance was what made Cartoon Network's empire so strong. The future was on CN. The history was on Boomerang. Together, it gave the kingdom depth. And of course, Boomerang also gave us the oddballs, like Goober and the Ghost Chasers. Basically the Wish.com version of Scooby-Doo. Or Speed Buggy, which was just Scooby-Doo, but the dog was a car. But hey, even the knockoffs had their place. They showed you just how influential Scooby was. You don't get that many copycats unless you've struck gold. And here's the bigger thing. Boomerang turned kids into smarter fans. It connected the dots. You saw that Ed, Edd, and Eddy slapstick was built on Tom and Jerry. That Courage's absurd villains had roots in the surrealism of old Tex Avery shorts. That the Powerpuff Girls weren't out of nowhere, they were riffing on Hanna-Barbera superhero shows. Boomerang taught context. It said cartoons aren't disposable. They're part of a tradition, a lineage, and a history worth knowing. For me, those Scooby nights on Boomerang are just as core as Tom's See a Star Side. Boomerang was the Castle Archives, the treasure vault, the reminder that while Cartoon Network pushed forward with wild experiments, it never forgot its roots. And honestly, That's part of why Cartoon Network reigned supreme. It wasn't just the new or the weird. It was the respect for everything that came before. So here we are. We've walked through the kingdom of Cartoon Network. We've seen how cartoons gave us the heart, fearless experimental shows born out of artists just trying to make each other laugh. We've seen how Toonami gave us the sword and shield, anime and action wrapped in myth, Tom's Heartbeat, Peter Cullen's Thunder, and events that made us part of the crew. We've seen how Adult Swim gave us the After Dark Clubhouse, surreal, satirical, absurd, and quietly reshaping comedy for the internet age. And we've seen how Boomerang guarded the vault, preserving the roots, teaching us that great cartoons never really age. 4 pillars, 1 empire. And for an entire generation of us, it wasn't just television, it was home. And maybe part of why it all mattered so much is because of the time it lived in. The late 90s and early 2000s, man, that era just felt different. Yeah, we had distractions. We had PlayStations, Pokemon cards, Napster, dial-up internet that tied up the phone lines. But we still spent just as much time outside, pretending we were Power Rangers, staging wrestling matches on the trampoline, or acting out Dragon Ball Z fights on the playground, defending Earth from Cell, one Kamehameha at a time. The shows fed into our imagination and our play fed back into the shows. It was adventurous, it was communal, and honestly, it was so special. That's what made Cartoon Network's golden age hit so hard. It wasn't just on the TV. It was in how we lived as kids. The kingdom was on screen, but we carried it with us into the backyard. You know, I think about how different things feel now. Everything's content, algorithms, metrics, focus tested, committee approved, greenlit to hit 4 quadrants. But back then, it was chaos. Beautiful, joyful chaos. Animators in a room trying to make each other laugh. Executives saying, sure, let's let a robot host the anime block. William Street cobbling together Adult Swim with duct tape and recycled footage. Ted Turner insisting kids deserve the classics. Put Bugs Bunny on a pedestal. It wasn't about trends, it was about passion. And we got to benefit from that. We grew up in an era where TV didn't just entertain us. It challenged us. It freaked us out. It inspired us. It stuck with us. But kingdoms don't last forever. By the mid-2000s, cracks started to show. Cartoon Network tried live action with CN Real, and the fit was rough. Streaming started pulling audiences away from cable. Must-see TV gave way to binge at your own pace. And in 2022, the final blow. Cartoon Network Studios was officially folded into Warner Brothers Discovery, and a piece of animation history gone. For a lot of us, it felt like Toonami's cancellation in 2008 all over again, like the kingdom had well and truly fallen. And I'll be honest, when the news broke, it hurt, because it wasn't just a studio. It was a piece of our childhood, our culture, our identity. Steve, really? Right now, dude? I'm in the middle of a sentimental close, man. Fuck. Fine, but this is your last interruption. Go haunt someone else's studio. He's not wrong, though. That Golden Age DNA is still alive. You can feel it in Adventure Time, Craig of the Creek, Steven Universe, even Total Drama. That weird, heartfelt, boundary-pushing energy never really left. And I'll tell you what, Adventure Time gave me one of my favorite personal crossovers of all time, because now I can't play Gears of War without hearing Jake the dog singing Bacon Pancakes. Same voice actor, John DiMaggio. He gave us Marcus Phoenix's gravelly grit and then turned around and gave us a stretchy, chubby yellow dog who just wants to make breakfast. That's the magic of Cartoon Network's legacy. It connects dots you'd never expect. Bacon pancakes, making bacon pancakes. I take some bacon and I put it in a pancake, bacon pancake. But here's the thing. Cartoon Network never really left. Because we're still here. We can all still do Ed's goofy laugh. We can still hear Courage's whimper. We can still remember Tom's voice saying, "See you, Starside." We can still sit down with family, watch Scooby, and laugh at jokes that worked 3 generations deep. That's the legacy. Not the buildings, not the executives, but us. Cartoon Network gave us more than content. It gave us culture, a shared language. It made weird kids feel seen. It made anime fans feel like they belonged. It made insomniacs feel like they'd found a secret club. And even if the channel looks different now, even if the studios are gone, those memories, they're forever. That golden age doesn't just live in the past, it lives in us and in the now. So when I think about Cartoon Network in the 90s and 2000s, I don't just think about a channel. I think about a kingdom, bold, weird, fearless, and united by 4 pillars that gave us laughter, action, absurdity, and history. The kingdom may have faded, the towers may have fallen, but legends echo forever, and Cartoon Network in its golden age will always be king. Thanks for hanging with me on this deep dive into Cartoon Network's golden age. Shout out to my number 2. Thank you for bearing with me through all the researching and overanalyzing of these episodes. Shout out to Cap. Thank you for seeing this whole thing before I ever did. Shout out to my brother for holding AJN down while I dive into these deep dives. And shout out to Pickle. Get your hand out of your pants. And of course, shout out to you, the listeners, the community, the ones who make this worth doing every week. You're a part of this kingdom too. And if you're new here, welcome aboard. This is the Average Joe Nerdcast, where we celebrate the games, shows, and cartoons that shaped us, with passion, with humor, and with all the nostalgia you can handle. And if this unlocked some memories for you, hit me up. Share your favorite Cartoon Network moment. Tell me what show defined your childhood. Or maybe just email us your best Johnny Bravo impersonation. And if you dug the show, don't forget to give it a 5-star rating and review. It really does help feed the algorithm gods, and share it with a friend who lived through this golden age with you. For questions or comments, you can always email me at averagejoenerdcast@gmail.com or connect with the community on Facebook, Instagram, or X. Until next time, stay gold, nerd bold, and I'll see you Starside. Oh, and don't forget, next week kicks off the 31 Nights of Nerdoween. We're flipping the switch from nostalgia to nightmares, diving into the monsters, slashers, and spooky stories that shaped Halloween for nerds like us. So grab your flashlights, dust off those VHS tapes, and get ready, because Nerdoween is coming.
Game over.
Well, that about does her. Hope you enjoyed it. This is Tom, signing off. And until we meet again, you know the rest.